Hey everyone, welcome in. Betsperts Golf here for our first look at the Rocket Classic. It's a important first look because this new Detroit golf club looks nothing like we've seen in the past. Joining me here as always, who will have boots on the ground very shortly, which is why we started a little bit earlier today. PGA Splits 101, Ron Kloss. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, congratulations to you on the Jackson Koivun win. Frustrated because I been on the last couple weeks. Then you have the 3M. Scotty's there. I took some guys in the without market. Really wishing I would have jumped on him. We've seen glimpses of him the past few weeks, but for some reason I decided to go another direction. So yeah, really excited for especially for USA Golf with.
Yeah.
I think we'd all agree we need a little bit of a jolt there for the Ryder Cup. So, Koivun, Blades Brown, who looks like he's going to get into the Rocket Classic as well. We have Thor Bjornsson playing. So, yeah, it's a great mix of players this week at the Rocket. Very bittersweet, obviously for me. Attending this event, and this is the last year as of right now. So we'll see if any changes happen with that. But yeah, I mean, great field, best field we've ever had here. So
Yeah.
excited to get into it.
I would be interested to see what happens with like the player feedback from the course and see how much they like the renovations in terms of how it plays itself out in the new schedule, right? It might have a different sponsor, right? Rocket might not want to pitch their wagon and pony up for, the Challenger Series events, but maybe someone will. And there's just, I mean, there's so much incredible golf in Michigan. Doesn't mean that all of it has the ability to like host a PGA Tour event, just in terms of all the other parts of the piece of the puzzle and outside of the golf course that go into hosting a PGA Tour event. But like, we should be in Michigan at some point here in the summer, and then we got to find a way to get to one of the incredible tracks that's up there. So hopefully this looks really really cool, and I'm excited to get your reports and get a sense of what we think here. So yeah, the Koivun thing is, look, I'm quick to get enamored with the new shiny toy. I think a lot of us are. This one does feel a little different, and I do think it's hard to, in terms of what we like to do and measuring data and quantifying performance through the rabbit hole and all the other things. I think what is different about this kid isn't necessarily going to pop in the rabbit hole, because there just seems to be a mentality that's a little bit different than some of the other top tier guys that have come through in the last little bit. And again, like, I'd be quick on Thor and even like a Ludwig, like, just you watch him hit balls and you would be like, oh, this guy's, there's something different. But it's not really golf at the end of the day. These guys are all would wow you if you watched a full range session, right? Like, you could watch literally Hank Lebiota on the range for 40 minutes and be like, damn, like, this is, why isn't that guy win all the time? But like, it's that like intangible between the ears piece that this kid seems to have it a little bit different. And I do think winning reps matter. And the fact that he won and closed so frequently, that I think he just, without being super cocky and arrogant, I think he thinks he belongs. And I don't think he was caught off guard by being in that spot yesterday, even with Scotty chasing him down. And I know that like the 3M isn't like the most grueling test of golf, and that wasn't like an insanely tough field, but everyone that had like some historical success and major championships on like in that field were kind of on their way up the top of the leaderboard, and including Scotty Scheffler. And the kid went out and like threw a dart on the first hole to like 1.5 feet, and you're like, okay, he's ready to do this today. It just kind of felt like right there it wasn't much of a sweat, even when it got a little bit tight at the end, because he just felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. I probably could have done this last year. I went back to school, won another natty with my team, and now it's time to do this. So feels different. Fun to
Yeah,
watch.
and the thing with that's really impressive is his putter is so good that it can bail him out when he gets in trouble, and which is rare. But we saw it yesterday, even on the last hole where he makes that last putt and it mattered to him. Like, so
Yeah.
usually we don't see guys that young who are that good with the putter. It's usually ball strikers, but he just has such a well-rounded game, and man, playing again this week, so really excited.
Yeah. Really excited. I watch a lot of YouTube golf, not in like the sense of like YouTube golf that people think of, but like I'll just find different things. And there's a lot of like little Jackson Koivun things out there of like, you know, Titleist has done some stuff with him, some stuff from Auburn, and he like the mentality piece really comes through. And he's talked about like, and not an arrogant way, I feel like I'm the best putter in the world, and I work relentlessly to feel like I'm the best putter in the world. And while statistically we know that that's a very noisy week over week statistic, there's just definitely a bunch of guys that have high performing baseline putting performances, and this is, I think, is going to be one of them. I think this kid's going to be, you know, towards the top of the PGA Tour and putting for the next little bit. So yeah, be interested to see how that goes. But yeah, talk to us about the Rocket. Obviously, Detroit, you've been, you know, in touch with the you know, architect who's been redesigning it. The scorecard's obviously massively different. The aesthetics of the course are different. You know, but I think big picture, we're going from a, you know, par 72 that played almost 2 shots under par to a very long par 70. What do we got at Detroit?
Yeah, so like you said, Tyler Ray, kind of an up-and-coming designer, did a complete restoration here as soon as the last putt dropped of last year's Rocket Classic. So it was kind of a 10, 11 month project here. And so, yeah, the goal is to kind of restore Donald Ross's original scale, his strategy, the original character of the course, and also trying to, as most of these restorations do, trying to keep the course updated for modern play. But like you said, pretty much the biggest change off the start, you know, especially that affects us, is the scorecard, where it's going to be a par 70, down from the par 72 that it played for the first 7 years. The course yardage is pretty much the same, just over 7,300 yards. So, you know, we're kind of going from an average length course, when you just look just from the scorecard, to a long course. I mean, these are some really long par 4s. But the biggest thing is, you know, you have 4 par 5s before, and now there's only 2. And the 7th and 17th holes pretty much transformed to short par 5s. So now really long par 4s, both well over 500 yards. Those 2 holes were the easiest every single year of the Rocket, and it's pretty much assured that they're going to now flip to being the 2 toughest holes, which pretty much changes everything from a scoring perspective. And so one of the things to look at this week, Detroit Golf Club is now going to have 4 par 4s that play over 500 yards. So usually don't see that many holes on a course. Even the closing 18th hole, which was kind of, you know, very challenging to begin with, a difficult green, that's up to 470 yards now as well. And from what I've heard, is even more difficult to find the fairway than it was before. So just the increase in difficulty alone from that. Then you have every green was restored kind of back to the shape that Donald Ross originally had designed it. You know, obviously over time this happens. Courses lose kind of their edges. And so they've always been, and this was just a Donald Ross feature, his greens always naturally slope from back to front. So that's still there, but they've also been raised. They've been expanded. So 5,400 square feet was the average size. Previously, they're up to 6,700 square feet on average. So larger surfaces, a lot of newer, tougher pin positions that kind of these golfers have never had to face here. And as always the case, when you get new greens, especially this first year, they're going to be much firmer. They're going to be bouncier. So we are going to see more difficulty on approach shots, which, you know, I think that's been one of the things at this course that people have always complained about, is it's just so easy. You know, it's, you know, again, summertime here in Detroit, I'm going to have to keep things wet, and, you know, you want to keep the grass alive. So they're going to water, but, you know, I still think this first year is going to be much firmer than we've seen in the past, which I'm really excited for as well. You've got bunkers. Bunkers increased, not a high increase from 84 to 91, but now they're much larger. They're deeper. They're more penal. And something that they've done here that I can't wait to get out and see in person is, you know, they've the sand on the front edges, they're high flashed up to 4 feet high. And so when you're standing on a lot of these tee boxes, you know, you get this visual element of elevation down the fairway, when technically this is still the flattest course on tour, but these bunker edges, and then you have the fescue grass kind of like eyelashes to the bunkers, which is kind of trimming the outer edges. And so just a whole different look to the bunkering. And again, I think this is going to make play off the tee, even though the fairways might be a little wider, These bunkers are actually protruding into the fairways now. So that's another thing I'll get to here in a minute. But another thing, the only water hazard on the course, that large pond that was on the 14th has been completely removed, filled in with fescue. And that green on that par 5 was also elevated and is actually smaller. So it's one of the greens that went down in size. So just another example of a par 5 that was really easy before, probably going to get tougher. So no water hazards on the course at all.
Which is crazy because we're in Michigan, where
Yep.
there's like the most fresh water of any place in the entire world, right? You have like the most freshwater coastline of any place in the entire world, and we have no water on this golf course, which is just just funny to me. I would think
and
water would be incorporated.
That's a pretty big contrast too, going from TPC Twin Cities where you
Sure.
have water everywhere, and so yeah, completely different here now. And one thing that is pretty cool that they're not water filled, but and there were a few of these last year, but over the years, many of the ditches. So for irrigation purposes, Donald Ross built these ditches everywhere. They traverse fairways. They even ran alongside of greens. Those have all been restored now to fix, any water runoff issues, and pretty much a new hazard that golfers are going to have to avoid. And a lot of these are also bordered by fescue, so kind of giving that look throughout the course with these ditches as well. And so, as far as how it's going to play different, obviously we've already said it's going to be tougher for sure, not just on the scorecard, but in general. But off the tee, I think actual strategy is going to come into play now. These fairways were rebuilt, and one of the goals that Tyler Ray had was to kind of bring back the strategic angles that Donald Ross originally had. And so, the Rocket Classic has always been pretty much a bomb and gouge, and we remember Bryson, one of his first wins was here. But now you're going to have to think off the tee. There's strategy involved. The bunkers are pinching landing areas. You have to choose. I think distance is still going to be an edge here because I think the longer guys are still going to be able to clear some of these. But you're going to have to consider some of these holes where you might have to take a little conservative line, play a little further back. And again, that's going to create longer approaches. So it's kind of the thing that Detroit has been missing. And I think a lot of these things are back here. And we'll be able to kind of compare it to some other courses. We've already talked about Aronimink. When we saw, the PGA, the scoreboard was, it was crazy how close it was to a Rocket Mortgage scoreboard. And, like you said, I think the course kind of does have that look now that we saw earlier in the year. So
you could tell me that the picture behind you is Aronimink.
Yeah.
We have to figure out, and you'll get a sense of that here later this morning around graduated rough and what does. Like we even saw like Cam Smith pop a little bit at Aronimink because he was spraying it so bad that he was getting himself into the sections where like the pedestrians were walking and matting everything down. What does it look like when you work yourself off fairway? Because it does have that feel. And as we know with Donald Ross courses, obviously the green complexes always jump out, but there is typically strategy off the tee, which I love hearing that you think is going to be the case this year. Like you can go to Sedgefield. Sedgefield's not a bomb and gouge, grip it and rip it course. We've seen some guys with length win there, but it doesn't necessarily, length is always an advantage, but I don't think it's, the way you would go out and attack Sedgefield. And I'm interested to see if Detroit plays more like a longer version of that, which we're going to see next week, which I think I love Sedgefield. I think it's one of my favorite venues on the tour. I think there's a lot of different style of golfers that can win. I think it's an interesting test. And, you're going to give me new firm, bouncy greens. I think this could be a pretty fun week. So again, it does seem like it's a little bit of a bummer because it might be our last go. But we'll see what happens and that'll play itself out. But I'm excited to get some information from you while you're out there on the course. Cause I think we're both, I don't want to say struggling, but I think we're both confused of how to model it compared to what we typically do, especially when we have a bunch of history on, all right, this course, this is what's happened here. This is how it's won. We know how to pull forward what worked the year before. I would not run last year's Detroit Golf Club Rocket Classic model and just refresh and update. I think you were going to be sadly mistaken for, a multitude of reasons, which I think Ron just laid out there. So let's look at the opening odds board here. Courtesy of our friends over at Sharpstack at 4for4. Great odds board here. Got to get some of these books to populate. I know there's some stuff here that's coming in. That's not all up on the screen, but we can kind of go through some of the stuff that we do have here. Strong field, to Ron's point. I mean, really good field. I think guys wanted to make a choice of where they're going to play leading into the playoffs. Some guys will skip, everything after the Open going into the playoffs. Most don't. Most want to get something in, which is very much the simple answer to why was Scotty in Minnesota. A lot of guys don't want to play the lead in going into it. If you think you're going to make a run into the playoffs, you're probably not playing the Wyndham. So there's just kind of a natural spot for a lot of that tier to land up here in Detroit. So you get a really solid field. Cam Young, Xander, Chris Gotterup, Wyndham Clark, Siwoo, all short of 20. Patrick Cantley here around 22. Russell Henley down to 25. Jackson Koivun here again, as you said, 26 on DraftKings. That's kind of off market based off of what we've seen in other places. Ben Griffin, Jake Knapp, who just birdie on the back there on Sunday. Good to see him back and firing. 33 on Jake Knapp. Jake Knapp, again, I'm not going to, say you don't bet Jake Knapp. I think it makes a ton of sense. If we were on like last year's Detroit, Jake Knapp would be a smash at 33, and I think you run it back and like chase it down. I'm not sure I'm like dying to trip over myself to bet Jake Knapp here with this new Detroit. He still might be a great play. I'm saying, like, if you're thinking that it's the previous Detroit, slow down before chasing that. JJ Spawn, Hideki, Nikolai Højgaard, Akshay, Thor, all kind of right at 40, 42 on Gerard right there too. So, and then when you get down this, second, third tier, there's some decent names with some decent prices. It's a strong field. To Ron's point, it's, not just a little bit top heavy. It's pretty deep. So check that out on a Monday, shop around, but really, really strong field to look at. Same thing on the core stats page. Be careful. Again, we're pulling, Ron's previews got kind of where you want to live. We have the new course features, course facts, updated corollary courses, because if you go into the course stats page, you're going to get previous, a lot of the previous stuff. It's, some of this is, Ron's updated some of this for us, but we still don't know some of these, how it's going to play. If you want to look at course metrics, this is getting previous golf course, and it's a pretty sizable change from what Poggeter went out and, bomb and gouge last year. So be careful there. Any thoughts on some of the corollary courses? We both mentioned some other Donald Ross stuff, Aronimink, Sedgefield. We have some of the TBCs that are listed up there. Anything else that jumped out to you in terms of corollary courses that we might want to look at if we're modeling this week?
I think that's one of the best ways to go about it because, for example, Colonial was not on this list before. Colonial is one of the not toughest, but it's on the tougher side. And, it's another par 70, plays very similar yardage. So I don't think and Colonial plays, I think around a quarter of a stroke to a half stroke over par. Now, if you just look at the scoring from Detroit over the last 5 years and you equate it to a par 70, that's 0.2 strokes over par. So I think it's 68.2, or I'm sorry, 70.2. So, basically if we just transfer the par to what it is now, it's going to play over par, which is kind of crazy to think about when you think about how, how much of a birdie fest it was here. Sure. But I think, Colonial, I think, like we said, Aronimink, Sedgefield, some of those Canadian Open courses, Toronto, I think Oakdale. Interesting thing that I'm also looking forward to is the rough, because it's always listed at 4 inches here, but it's very patchy because of all the trees. Now, there have been some tree removal with the renovation. And when I go out there, it's always somewhere between 3.5 inches. And there's some spots where it's like even on the sides of the fairways, even further back, it's 2 inches. So interested to see if that's actually 4 inches this year, if it's actually thicker. But yeah, I think going through the correlated courses and kind of, we have that ability on the front of the rabbit hole where you can just click that button and it will load all those in for you. So I think that's an interesting look to see kind of who pops in that. And that's one of the routes that I'm going to be taking this week.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a way. And again, score relative to par, I think you're still going to have a double-digit winner in the teens. But in terms of like with field average, like looking at this, last year's almost 2.5 strokes under par on average. Like last year really played soft. You see the birdie rate here, 25.6%, just kind of, it's a big number. You could see almost, 4 and change above a PGA Tour average event last year. So again, last year played a little bit easier than other times, but still a course where you can go out and make birdie from the rough at a pretty high rate. It's going to be different this year. So, and obviously, if, you're talking about, we're going to have 3.5, 4-inch rough on these approach shots from 200 plus yards into these sometimes elevated but very firm and new greens. That's a test. Like that's a very, very different test than what we've grown accustomed to here in Detroit. So yeah, if you want to do that here in the rabbit hole, you can just click the load comp course button and it will populate all these for you. Typically when we're doing this, I like to load comp courses and add the course rat too. But I don't think that's in play this week. So we just looked here the last 2 years. We'll look at the comp courses and see if there's anything popping up here. Look at average, kind of mixed rounds. 15 round sample for Jackson Koivun at 2.13, Russell Henley at 2, JJ Spawn 1.85, Ben Griffin, Hideki, Gotterup, Cam Young kind of separate there, basically right around 1.5 strokes on these courses over the last 2 years. So kind of their own separate tier. And most of those guys are gaining throughout the bag. If they're losing a little bit, it would be around the green, but the ball striking test is really good. And they're all handling that pretty well. If you just look at the ball striking, Henley, Coles, Spawn, Koivun, Horschel, Neil Shipley, Doug Gim kind of pop up there too. You get a little bit of Smotherman and Brennan. So again, kind of a borderline sample size, but I think not nothing if you want to look at way to handicap the week, because I think it is going to be a tough handicap. You kind of have to pick a lane in terms of what you want to look at. I do think comp courses is a pretty good spot. What other stats? Anything else that jumps out to you? I think par 4 scoring jumps out to me in terms of something that we need to look at. I think I'll get your thoughts. We can look at par 70, right? You can go into filter by conditions and you can choose par 70. We don't have a ton of par 70 tracks on tour, but we have a good amount. But I think really what we're trying to do is get a sense of the par 4s. Because if I'm looking at par 70, what bleeds into that data a little bit is how the par 3s and par 5s played that week. Really what I'm trying to do is get a sense of who's played best on par 4s, so I can drill down specifically at par 4s. And in this instance, based off what you've highlighted, we want to look at some longer par 4s, right? I want to look at strokes gained, par 4s, 450 to 500, 500 plus, because we have 4 of those, and that's kind of unusual. So for me, I think looking at par 4s specifically versus looking at par 70s, I think is probably the best route. Smaller sample, we don't want all records.
Yeah. And like you said, we can even look at, difficult par 4s, which we also have the ability to look at. But I think just par 4s in general, hopefully soon we can get some data in the rabbit hole where, we can look at specific scoring on par 4s on individual courses, which I think would be great. But yeah, I think going the par 4 route, 14. We have 12 par 4s this week. So yeah, 2 more than normal. I think that's going to be a huge edge and definitely something to look at here. And some names, 2 guys who have played very well here. Like you said, not really looking at past data here. Even the course history stuff that I normally do, not even really looking at that this week. But Akshay and Cam Young have played very well here in the past. Yeah, those are 2 guys who I'm very interested in this week for sure.
Yeah, you can see they're at top of the board in 2026 in strokes gained par 4s. Although you add Siwoo in there too, if we extend back to January now that we've covered a little bit. So Siwoo, Cam Young, Jackson Koivun are the top in strokes gained par 4s in 2026. Right behind that, Russell Henley, Patrick Cantley, Ben Coles, Xander, Akshay, Bridgman, all kind of right up there. If you want to look at their birdie rates, par 4 scoring average, but then we get into the longer par 4s. Here's where we can separate a little bit. 450 to 500 bucket, Jackson Koivun, Siwoo Kim, Xander, Patrick Cantley, Ryan Gerard, which does not surprise me. I thought Gerard would have been up there a little bit even on the other par 4s. Um, yeah, there's Akshay Call right there as well. Gotterup, Knapp, Wyndham, uh, long 500 plus par fives for par fours. Again, you wouldn't expect Russell Henley to be your best long par four scorer because he's he's carrying it about 265 off the tee, with 165 ball speed, but keeps himself in play off the tee. Consistent, just doesn't play himself out of anything. Russell Henley, Bo Hostler, Davis Thompson, Cam Young, Takumi Kanaya, Joel Damon, Patrick Cantley, Adam Svensson, Seamus Power, Hisasune, Ben Coles again. So maybe some names you wouldn't necessarily expect on some long par fours. And these are all, it's a pretty sizable sample. This is all of 2026 strokes gained par four, 500 plus yards. So these are definitely core modeling pieces for me this week. Strokes gained par fours, 450 to 500, 500 plus. We got a lot of that this week. Let's see who struggles long par fours. I mean, Brennan Todd, I'm surprised we even have much sample. We haven't seen much of him. Danny Walker. See any of the bigger names that would jump out here. There's Potgieter, your defending champ. That's not been very good. Luke Clanton, this is a bummer. See if he could figure it out. Griot. Let's see, Sam Stevens, Echeverria, Jordan Spieth. These guys are all losing strokes on long par fours. Michael Brennan, par fours have not been his thing. He's really picked apart par fives because he's pretty much flat to the field on the year on all par fours. Hideki's not been very good on long par fours this year. Trying to see if there's anyone that jumped out. So that's kind of it for the most part. Everyone else is at least gaining on the field on the par fours. So what else should we look at?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm interested to see, I have a hunch though, just based on the course and the bunkering on the fairways, is there's definitely going to be a higher missed fairway penalty. So, I think off the tee is going to be key this week, and just looking at, even some of the ditches that are new, that are lining some of the fairways. So I think that's something that's, obviously I'm not going to weigh it high, and I love the idea of putting average in there as well. Just to get a bigger sample. But I think off the tee is just going to be key this week. I think a lot of guys who have played here before, they're going to see when they start these practice rounds, it's going to take some time to get used to kind of the new. I mean, the lines are completely different off the tee. That's how much the bunkering is kind of affect things. So I think this is one of the things I'll look at off the tee for sure.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to make a off the tee club decision in terms of what we're going to see. From what we're hearing from Ron so far, I would not select driver heavy, which is again what we've had in the past here. See if we get anything from the course, from the players, from Ron being out there this week and talking to players and caddies and architects and whatnot. So I'm looking at missed fairway penalty and rough penalty being high and average. So basically, we're pulling out anything where it would be easy bombs away, regardless of what's going on here. So you want to look at strokes gained off the tee in the situation. Small sample for Jesper Svensson. Then we get to Michael Brennan. And again, we just kind of got some of the par 4 data on Brennan, which isn't great. Then you get to Cam Young, Johnny Kiefer, Neil Shipley, Marco Penge, Doug Gim, Jordan Smith, Chris Gotterup. Those guys are all gaining. There's Xander, all gaining more than a half shot off the tee this year in these setups, which I think is important. Let's just look at strokes gained total in these setups. We can look at a little ball striking stuff too, because I think that's an important test. Who's ball striking well. Cam Young, there's Svensson again. Siwoo, Xander, Coles, Henley, smothering Gotterup, kind of popping there a little bit. And strokes gained ball striking when there's a high missed fairway penalty and a high rough penalty. So, tough to model on a Monday morning when we have a completely revamped course, and we just don't have any reps. We're not getting like the flyovers and stuff that we get for a major as much. So I think we're doing our best here to piece it together. But I think this is something I would agree with you that would differ mightily from previous years for sure.
Yeah, another thing, putting has always been the toughest part of this course. There's some guys who just have always struggled on these greens. I know Andrew Novak is one who told me that he just cannot figure out the greens here. And so, I think they might even be harder just because of there were more undulations and sloping, a lot of it more subtle added here. And so, I think guys who can make 5 to 15 foot putts, kind of that range. I think we even have the 4 to 8 foot range,
Yep.
but that's going to be a key range this week. And just, I'm not even going to select a grass type. I'm just looking at guys who are consistent, kind of short range putters, especially on some of these difficult par fours where you're going to be scrambling to make par here. And so this is something, like you said, kind of more of a generic model week, just kind of bigger picture. Probably going to take a lot more recent form. There's some guys in this field like, we've seen on the list already, Billy Horschel, Ben Coles, who are really hot right now. Even Michael Kim's in this field as well. We kind of saw him do the roller coaster of, 69, 59, 70, and then he kind of struggled again on Sunday. So it's just, golf is so crazy how you can be so hot and then you just lose it completely the next day.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's tough. Yeah, looking at putting ranges, again, a lot of really strong putters. I mean, Ben James is giving us some signs that he can hold putts. And again, most statistically noisy stat that we have. But again, when you start to see, guys consistently perform around, or above, field average, there's probably something to be said for that. Larger greens, maybe again with, I think combination of larger greens, longer approach shots, firmer greens. It might be a spot too where like approach putting, 3-putt avoidance might come.
3-putt avoidance for sure.
More,
yeah.
Right? Because we're just going to have more putts from longer out versus what we've had here in the past too. So you can go into not the putting ranges, but into just the putting view. You can get, approach putting, 3-putt avoidance from 25 feet. These things I think are going to matter quite a bit this week too. So again, not something I'm going to model heavily, but I think it's definitely something that we should probably be looking at.
Agreed.
Yeah, good putters. All right, perfect. Anything else for the people? I want to let you get out and get over to the course.
Yeah, click on any player here. I want we have made an update to I guess you call it an addition. If you go down to the tournament results section. So before you could see a player's strokes gained, but yeah, you see it here because it's already on here. So you have the full menu, everything we have on the normal rabbit hole filter, and you can just, if you want to go by tournament level. So if you on average here, you'll see any metric you want is available now, and anything from ball speed to par 5, and like you just showed on the screen there, you can now click and open up each tournament itself, and you can go by round, so you can see the exact numbers for anything you want. So it's another cool addition where if you're doing kind of an individual research for a player, you can just you got the whole library down here now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was playing with it this weekend. It's sick to have the ability to drop into any of the views. Obviously, you can still add any of the conditions that we can do from a high level view at a player level as well, which is great. It allows you to filter out some of the noisy data that wouldn't be super useful. It allows you to kind of to drill in here, which is, it's awesome addition. And again, we're just not stopping. Ron's always thinking of new stuff, things that could make research a little bit easier. And that's all right. Well, let's get it in the rabbit hole. Let's do it. This is another example of that. So great addition here for sure. You'd be able to drop down instead of just looking at this being rolling strokes gain stuff. You can look at all the things and, get trend lines for stuff too, which I think is really important to get a sense of, how someone's playing and trending as of late. So very, very cool. Love it.
And then the live leaderboard, we have every course metric. So we've had, every player, we're adding to this, by the way. This is expanding the player individual metrics, but there's now a course metrics tab, and you can kind of go through, and if you want to see how the course is playing compared to the tour average, you can go by round, you can go by tournament. So just another thing to help, with kind of in-tournament stuff.
Yep, and it can help. You can download any of it to the CSV, and you can get a sense of like, how it played that day. If there was like drastically different conditions, different winds, different whatever it was, and you could see even from round to round how things would play. I think this is really awesome too, the course metrics piece. So that's brand new. see all the other scoring metrics, tee to green, and basic strokes gain metrics while you're watching live. You know, I know you can watch some of it while you're, watching your player through the app, but if, this is updating just as fast. This is really, really, really quick data. There's no lag. There's some competitors out there that have some similar stuff, but there's a little bit of lag there. This is not lagging like that. This is right on pace if you want to kind of drill in and see what's going on. So yeah, check it out. I mean, great way to sweat when you're watching your guys during the tournament. So live leaderboard, course metrics piece is brand new too. Awesome.
We got that the Rebet thing too still going, right?
Look at this guy. Pro's pro. This Rebet deal is something you need to take advantage of. If you want to get a free subscription, you are just watching the free shows on the YouTube channel here. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, thumbs up on the video. Whatever you want to do. If you prefer a podcast, you can find us on podcasts as well. Great stuff. I recommend YouTube because we do a lot more screen sharing, so that helps if you want to see the rabbit hole. But if you actually want to use the rabbit hole for yourself, you don't currently do that, and you would just, again, you like to do the data deep dives, modeling is a little bit scary for you, subscribe, get in our Discord. We'll help you, show you how to do it. But through our friends over at Rebet right now, you can just get it for no additional charge. It's this simple. Deposit $10 at Rebet. You can deposit up to $100 and they'll match it 100%. So throw $100 in your account, you'll have $200 instantly. But just to get this free Betsperts Golf deal, all you need to do is deposit $10. They're going to send you an email to get your free Betsperts Golf subscription for no additional charge. You have to use promo code BSG. If you do not use promo code BSG, I unfortunately cannot help you get this for no additional charge. So you have to use promo code BSG. You can click the links here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. This is an article that you'll find on the homepage. Very, very easy to walk through. It is a sportsbook casino app. So you can, use that $10, $20 instantly and bet on your guys for the Detroit Classic, for the Rocky Classic. So pretty simple. So again, use promo code BSG. Let me know specifically if you have any questions. Yeah, definitely check this out. I don't think going to be here for long, but it's here for now. So it's a great deal. Check it out. Again, it'll get you a full calendar year. So you can jump in now. You'll have all of next year's majors. It'll get you through next year's Rocky Classic or whatever it's going to be in its place. Full calendar year Betsperts Golf for no additional charge, typically $250. So, all right, Ron, boots in the ground, go get it. Appreciate everyone hanging out as always. Again, remember, subscribe and like on the video before we take off. It goes a long, long way supporting what we do. Jump into Discord.